Back in those days, the track I used was Pico, and I used live frog points, so it was less of a problem then with locomotives getting over them. But during the period of time that we moved here and didn't have a model railway and hadn't actually floored the loft here, I bought a job lot of used Fleischmann set track, and I used to be able to put that out on the conservatory floor and run trains as a temporary measure. And really it's that set track that came up into the loft in the end, and is what I've used here to put the track down on this layout. To some extent it's harder work than using normal Pico flexible track, especially when it comes to using rail joiners. That can be a right old headache sometimes, because they're not flat to the underneath of the rail. You want grooves cut in the track bed, which can be quite annoying. In relaying some straight track in place of the point, I'm bringing the curve in slightly tighter, more of a natural curve, a bit clearer of the scenery. That does mean in places I have to scrape out some of the original ballast, which was would now be under the track. So I don't know if you can see the line I've scribed there. The original ballast was. You don't want that under the track now because it won't be level. It's coming in at a sharper curve there, particularly in the bend where I seem to have got a lot of sound rather than foliage here. Get rid of that. All this of course will be reseated later in the new location, and all that old ballast comes clear now because that was stuck with PVA glue, so it comes off fairly easily. I want to try and get the track bed that the new track is going on as level as possible. If it's not level, that's where you get contact problems sometimes. I think I should get a paintbrush in a minute, sweep all this loose ballast away. Might even be used, some of it, reused. And I've got to cut this track here to fit. I use a pair of quite good quality snips to do the job. Just put a little mark, little nick in the track where you want to cut it, just in front of my fingernail there, and then perhaps cut it a bit more now. I've got a mark there, and then sometimes you can just fold it apart and it breaks off. Then you file the edges. Having put in a deeper cut, you can just fold the whole thing underneath. There, and then cut it off properly and file the edges. And then cut back some of the plastic ballast so that with the rail joints it's clear. And I've got to find some rail joiners and connect the track together. The original Fleischmann rail joiners require much more cutting of the ballast to fit in because they're much deeper. But if you were to use some Pico rail joiners, they're essentially flat and less effort required to get on your cut rail. I'm going to use a couple of Pico ones at this point. And then the rail should just slide together. Can't really well do that single-handed holding the... Oh well, you can see what's going to happen when they slide in. Probably have to use both hands for it, but you've got the idea. And that's cut all my rail to the right length. The next thing to do is connect them all in solidly and then pin down the track. Right, that's track in now all the way from where the point used to be for the loop. All dead straight track with no interruptions. All the way up around that curve. and connecting through to the outer one, the original one over the bridge. So the next thing to do is pin it down and then go over scenically later to fill in the gaps where sleepers have been cut free. If you can possibly manage to get a long distance view from the end of the track at any point, you can make sure everything is going down really straight and square. It's not always possible. Anyway, next thing to do, use the tiny pins, and that can be a bit fiddly. These are the ones I use, they're very tiny things. Sneeze and they disappear. Don't want anything too big and heavy for this job or you might split the track. I usually position them through a hole with a pair of pliers and see if I can push them in. So if you try and use a hammer, you can end up by bending the heads, or worse still, bending the track. Still he manages to sleep on. So I'm going to just put a little bit of, I've got natural sea sand here which I use as ballast. I'm going to sprinkle that around where the track's been disturbed, let it soak with PVA adhesive, washing up liquid, and then come back tomorrow and do the next stage, or if not tomorrow, certainly in a day or so. Yeah, that's already looking more realistic. Decide whether I'm going to remove that bit of straight track from the old loop later on. It could look quite good as if it was a loop at one time, seeing the serial cabins on an angle. And where there was a bit of a gap here, I've just filed down a sleeper and insert that in there, just like that. So there's no longer a gap there. I think it's ready now for PVA spray. Obviously I've just done the outer track at this stage. I put some ballast, as it were, over there where the inner track's going to go. But it's a matter of mixing up some PVA, diluting it, some washing up liquid, and spraying it over the whole area. And then leave it alone until the next day to do a final tidy up with a hoover, and then we're back in business. I used to buy the official Woodland Scenics spray bottle, but I make up my own mixture now from a much cheaper source. I think that was in the 99p shop. Oh no, it was Tesco, I see. Then mix that with water, put it in that spray bottle, and off you go. So there it is, soaked in PVA solution now. The washing up liquid, by the way, just makes it flow more readily. Those rail joiners there will need to be painted up. I think they're still showing. But it's a case now of leaving well alone and coming back later. I find sometimes that having covered it with PVA, it tends to sweep away some of the sand, so one or two areas here that could just benefit from a little bit more sand put on the top. Well, it's another day up in my model railway room. I've been working away getting the track ready for the double track over the bridge. As you can see, I've just got something laying there, curving around. The track will have to be cut there to suit. And around this far corner, again it's just lying there at the moment, passing behind the engine sheds. At the present time, just exiting there. Got to decide quite what I'm going to do there later on perhaps, but today I'm going to concentrate on fixing the track, which I know is going to be definite. And that is coming around here. It's a double track. That's the famous view. And over what will be a bridge eventually, connecting that with the top end of the layout. So what I've got to do, I've got my hand drill here, and my electric drill as well. Drill some very tiny holes at various points along the track, and insert the pins and locate the track and fill in any gaps with some free sleepers, and then ballast around that and let that dry overnight. Right, I've got the track in and pinned down now, and I've just gone over it with the vacuum cleaner, make sure there's no debris left. The outer track, of course, was dry, having been soaked in PVA glue for the ballasting, and I've gone around to make sure there's nothing left loose. And with the new track I've put in, again I've just hoovered up to get any surplus. I will need to ballast this a bit later, but I'm just going to do a little test run now of a train, make sure it gets around this new track with no problems. So, action. And now on the inner track. He had to pick up something in the station first. Now he had to get special authority to proceed on this uncompleted track. Right, hold it there because there isn't much more track. Right, so far so good. So now I need to ballast the inner track and leave it alone for till tomorrow.